A major move sets the stage for a Texas lawmaker to take over as the state's top tax collector.
Big day for this agency to make sure that as we are moving forward, this agency is in somebody's hands who is honest, who is trustworthy.
We look at the maneuvers to put a now former senator in an influential position and how that could change the campaign for this crucial office. The Supreme Court sets the stage for nuclear waste to be stored in Texas.
Most of the radioactivity has decayed off. There's not a lot of heat there.
But the decision comes at an interesting time for Texas as the state takes steps to boost the nuclear power industry. Progress on a pair of promises from Governor Greg Abbott, but plans to cut property taxes and boost our water supply still have one more step to go.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Dylan McKim. A now former state senator is looking to become the state's top money man, the person who collects your tax dollars. But to do that, he first needed to do a little political maneuvering. Republican Kelly Hancock was sworn in as the new chief clerk in the Comptroller's office. As State Capitol reporter Adam Schwager reports, the move could give Hancock an edge in the upcoming election to determine the next controller.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it, buddy.
There's a new comptroller in town, at least in a couple of weeks.
A big day for this agency to make sure that as we are moving forward, this agency is in somebody's hands who is honest, who is trustworthy.
In March, the Texas A&M Board of Regents decided Hagar would take over as their chancellor, creating an impending vacancy for comptroller. However, an attorney general ruling from 2002 prevents a sitting state lawmaker like Hancock from being directly appointed to a position like comptroller. So instead, Hancock was sworn in as chief clerk, so he's not an active senator when Hagar officially leaves on July 1st.
I'm chief clerk today because of the same way that everybody else takes a job. There's an opening, I was asked to fill it. I signed a bunch of paperwork just like everybody else that takes on a new job, and so I'm looking forward to my new job.
Hancock will now run as the incumbent in 2026 as he enters into a three-way Republican primary. Railroad Commissioner Christy Craddock is looking to take the seat after spending over a dozen years in her current role.
I would say the agency I'm in is the most important. It's the one who brings the money in, and we're going to go figure out how to spend the money on the next end.
And former state senator Don Huffines, who ran against Greg Abbott in the 2022 Republican gubernatorial primary, is also seeking the office.
I'm going to doge the state of Texas. And I tell you, if you want to doge Texas, it starts and ends in the comptroller's position. We're going to root out fraud, waste, and abuse and get great transparency.
Abbott has already weighed in, endorsing Hancock's minutes after his appointment while taking a shot at Huffines' state Senate loss. Comptroller primary takes place next spring.
You to repeat after me.
For State of Texas, I'm Adam Schwager.
We want to go a little deeper with the soon-to-be interim controller. Here's some more from Adam's interview with Kelly Hancock.
All right, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today. I don't know what I should call you, state senator, comptroller, clerk, kind of that waiting period. I guess just to start off, right, you're also announcing your candidacy for comptroller for 2026 as part of today. Can you just give your elevator pitch to the people of Texas as to why they should vote for you next year?
Sure, well, because I am them. I actually, you asked about titles. I go by Kelly is what I like. I'm still the guy that shops at Walmart, and I'm a small business owner. Sure, I've served as a school board member for 13 years, served in the legislature, but that's not who I am. I'm just a guy that grew up, married my high school sweetheart, went to college together, have 3 kids, 6 grandkids that are most important things in my life. But I love Texas, and this is a great, great state, and we are on a hot streak, and I want to continue to do that. I've served and really want to serve in the comptroller's office as well.
One of the big issues the comptroller will have to tackle in this interim period is education savings accounts being passed on to that office. How do you best plan to approach that issue?
Well, I think that's why my 13 years on school board, I just have some experience that nobody else in the race has. 13 years on school board, served on the Finance Committee for 10 years, worked on Article 3, which is the education part of the budget, and then I was on the Legislative Budget Board. And so it is crucial. And because of my love for kids and making sure that every every child gets to achieve their dream. Education is how we do that. And so that is part of the reason that we're moving so quickly in doing this, because we've got to get that done. We've got to get it ready to roll and learn from other states. And we're not the first one to do this. And so I'm excited about it. We've got a great team over there, which is why the legislature and the governor has that education savings account over in the comptroller's office. So we're excited and ready to go.
So one of the interesting things with this, not appointment, but hiring is, right, that 2002 Attorney General advisory kind of stating that current sitting lawmakers can't be appointed to positions that require Senate confirmation. Can you explain a little bit about the process that you're undergoing and when you resigned to be a state senator and how you're all working to make sure everything's above board?
Sure, not only above board, but transparent. And so it's pretty simple. I resigned from the Senate on the 18th. I filled out a job application. There was an opening. And so I would say, I'm chief clerk today because of the same way that everybody else takes a job. There's an opening. I was asked to fill it. Comptroller Hager and I are good friends. We've known each other for a long time. And so that's the way we wanted to go about it. And so that's where we are is right now. I filled out a job application. I was hired. I signed a bunch of paperwork just like everybody else that takes on a new job. And so I'm looking forward to my new job.
One follow-up to that is, people are saying the Texas Constitution about when someone resigns their position, they're supposed to kind of officially do those job duties until their replacement is duly appointed or duly sworn in. What happens in the event that there's a special session before your Senate seat can be given out to someone else?
Sure. Well, I'm pretty adept at multitasking. I've run a small business. I actually started the business when I first ran for office. So I've run a small business. I've been a husband, a father, a dats, which is what my grandkids call me. And so I'm used to multitasking. And if that happens and we have to do that, I'm still part of the community. Like I said, I'm still going to church with a small church in North Texas and shopping and do the same things everybody else does. So I'll continue to do my job.
So far, no Democrats have launched a campaign for controller. Candidates have until early December to file to be on the ballot. The Texas primary will be on March 3rd next year. Well, one frequent question we get when we cover the controller is how to pronounce the title. Even though the word is spelled with the letter P, the correct pronunciation is controller. But why? Well, we did a little research. One common explanation we found was that the word was derived from the Middle English word counterroller, referring to someone who checks a scroll. But somewhere along the way, some people mistakenly thought it was related to the French word compte, meaning account. The P became part of the spelling. That's confusing enough. On top of that, we've heard people like Governor Greg Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick pronounce the P. That even happens with some people who have held the controller's office here in Texas and in other states. A few years back, we asked Hagar about it, and he had his own take on how to handle the pronunciation.
I will say technically correct, either controller or comptroller. It's amazing, half the staff around here says one way and half the say the other way. As one of my deputies said 8 years ago when he was testifying in the legislature, somebody said, is it controller or comptroller? He said, let me explain to you like this. As of December 31, I was working for Comptroller Susan Combs. As of January 1, I now work for Controller Glenn Hager. It's however the boss says it. So both are correct, but I like to go by the word controller.
Now, Hager's office posted a similar sentiment on its website. It reads, quote, "We usually say controller, but comptroller is fine as well. We respond politely to either." A Supreme Court decision revives plans to store nuclear waste in West Texas. We look at how the ruling comes as the state pushes to lead the nation in nuclear energy investments.
Do you think your property taxes are too high? Yes. So do I.
Governor Abbott takes a key step toward keeping his promise to lower property taxes, but there's still one more step to make the cut a reality. A Supreme Court ruling has restarted plans to store high-level nuclear waste at a facility in West Texas. Nuclear experts say the High Court's ruling could eventually free up private companies to keep nuclear waste at different sites across the country. Washington correspondent Vinay Simlot digs deeper into the decision.
The Supreme Court says Texas doesn't have the right to sue, opening up an avenue for a private company to store nuclear waste in West Texas.
The storage of spent fuel has never harmed anyone.
Steve Nesbitt is a nuclear engineer and a nuclear safety analyst. A private company wants to develop this West Texas site to solve the problem of storing nuclear waste.
Most of the radioactivity has decayed off. There's not a lot of heat there.
The federal government licensed this site for temporary storage, but the state sued and took the case to the Supreme Court.
If anyone thinks this is temporary, I have a bridge to sell you.
Texas says the spent nuclear fuel would be stored over the Permian Basin, an oil and gas producing area in West Texas.
What the commission has just done is put a permanent terrorist bullseye on the most productive oil field in America.
But the Supreme Court didn't address the underlying legal argument. Texas claims the federal government can't license a private facility to store nuclear waste off-site from a nuclear plant. In 1982, Congress passed the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. It says the federal government needs to come up with a place to store nuclear waste or a geologic repository.
Basically a big hole in the ground. That's a little bit of an oversimplification.
The federal government selected Yucca Mountain northwest of Las Vegas, but the project stalled because the state opposed it. 43 years later, the government hasn't found another permanent location. In Washington, I'm Vinay Simlot.
Texas is striving to lead the nation in nuclear energy production. During his State of the State address, Governor Greg Abbott said it's time for Texas to lead a nuclear power renaissance in the U.S. Here's the current state of nuclear power in Texas. There are 2 nuclear power plants in Texas, one up here in Somerville County and one down on the coast in Matagorda County. In 2022, nuclear energy made up 10% of the state's total energy generation. That's according to the Texas Comptroller's Office. A new nuclear power plant is under development in Seadrift, just south of Matagorda, while Texas A&M University is offering land on its research campus to allow companies to build small, modular nuclear reactors that can supply power for data centers. The state also hosts one of the largest uranium deposits in the country. South Texas accounts for 8% of known U.S. uranium. That's according to the Comptroller's Office. During the legislative session in Austin, lawmakers filed various bills to address the governor's goal of a nuclear renaissance. The legislature passed House Bill 14, which will create the Texas Advanced Nuclear Energy Office within the governor's office. It will oversee nuclear development and provide $350 million in grants for projects. Lawmakers also created a new workforce development program for the nuclear energy industry. The plan to cut your property taxes moves closer to becoming reality. We look at why signing the legislation into law leaves these bills one step away from completion.
This isn't about our generation or current businesses. This is about the future of Texas.
Plus, progress on the plan to make sure the state has enough water to meet growing demand, how it's hitting home for one Texas lawmaker. Millions of Texans are one step closer to saving hundreds of dollars on their property tax bills. It comes after Governor Greg Abbott signed a $10 billion property tax relief package. The legislation passed with near unanimous support. But some in the governor's own party say the tax relief doesn't go far enough.
Do you think your property taxes are too high? Yes. So do I.
It has been a priority for Governor Abbott for multiple sessions, lowering the property tax bill for Texans.
This is Senate Bill 4.
The state is delivering with more relief again. A room full of lawmakers, mostly Republicans, stood behind the governor in support. But not every Republican is celebrating.
We are failing.
State Representative Brian Harrison voted yes on the property tax relief, but criticized the bills for not doing enough to cut taxes.
It is entirely conceivable that many or most homeowners and property owners will not see any real savings at all because the appraisals are likely to increase and eat up this new exemption.
But supporters say it's a big help for homeowners. The bills raise the homestead exemption to $140,000, and for disabled Texans and those 65 and older,
$200,000.
For some Texas seniors, it could mean paying nothing on school property taxes.
It means we have more money in our pockets more money for savings.
Inadelia Obregon lives in Austin and will benefit from this tax break, but she's concerned about the future. Will these permanent changes take away from other services? Governor Abbott assured the state is in a good financial situation.
And we have some other reserve money to make sure that we will be able to continue to maintain the property tax relief in the future that we provide today.
The property tax exemptions require amending the state constitution to take effect, so they will need to be approved by a majority of Texas voters in an election this November. Well, Texas is one step closer to investing $20 billion to make sure the state has water for generations to come. Governor Abbott traveled to Lubbock to sign a pair of water infrastructure bills, another one of his emergency items this session. The investment comes as experts warn of strain on the state's water supply. Officials like Speaker Dustin Burrows say the risk only increase as state's populations continues to grow.
People want to come here because of our economy, because of our culture, and they are coming here with U-Hauls, and we talk about it all the time. Here's what I know. If they show up and they turn on that spigot and water doesn't come out, those U-Hauls are going to go the absolute opposite direction.
The legislation would give $1 billion a year to the Texas Water Fund for the next 20 years. East Texas Representative Cody Harris sponsored the bill in the House. He brought his son along for the bill signing and reflected on the importance of the legislation for future generations.
It's great having him here. He actually was in the House chamber with me whenever I moved past or whenever I laid out the bill, Senate Bill 7 in the House. And he came up to the mic and he actually said the words, "I move passage" on Senate Bill 7. So I thought, what a great way to bring this all full circle to have him here for the signing of it by the governor. And for people to see that this isn't just about us. This isn't about our generation or current businesses. This is about the future of Texas. And that's exactly what these two bills accomplish.
Despite the bill signing, the water funding's not a done deal just yet. The measure will also require final approval from Texas voters this November in a constitutional amendment election.
So there's no question they had the ability to raise this issue earlier.
Texas Republicans lead a new push to paint President Biden as having been unfit to lead. How the move is deepening division on Capitol Hill. Texas Senator John Cornyn helped launch a hearing into what he claims was a coordinated cover-up of President Joe Biden's health while he was in office. It marks a new level in the push by Senate Republicans to paint President Biden as unfit to lead. Washington correspondent Rashad Hudson has the story.
Senate Republicans say the American people were misled, accusing the Biden administration and even members of the national press of covering up the former president's declining health.
Jake Tapper had a bombshell book exposing the incredible scandal that Biden's mental decline was covered up by Jake Tapper.
The hearing focused on what GOP senators like Texas's Ted Cruz and Tennessee's Marsha Blackburn called a pattern of concealment.
With your very own eyes, you could look at any of the footage and see what was transpiring with President Biden.
This hearing was the most aggressive yet by Senate Republicans to try to paint then President Biden as unfit to lead, reigniting debate over presidential health disclosures.
Apparently, armchair diagnosing former President Biden is more important than the issues of grave concern.
Illinois Senator Dick Durbin and Vermont Senator Peter Welch called the hearing political theater.
Because the politics that has been embraced in this Congress is the politics of accusation.
Some legal scholars testified supporting GOP claims about Biden's misuse of the auto pen.
An auto pen could be used by a subordinate, but the president's determination as to sign the document can never be delegated.
The office of former President Joe Biden denies a cover-up and any misuse of the auto pen during his term. Reporting in Washington, Rashad Hudson.
Senator John Cornyn co-chaired the hearing. The Texas Republican spoke to reporters afterwards about what he saw as the primary takeaway from the event.
Well, there was a monumental failure of the cabinet and the vice president to act, even though they had a duty to act under the 25th Amendment. So there's no question they had the ability to raise this issue earlier when his incapacity became obvious to everybody who was paying attention. So Congress needs to look at what possible remedies that we might be able to legislate.
Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee refused to participate in the hearing. They called it a distraction from more pressing issues, including President Trump's use of the military to respond to immigration protests in Los Angeles. One day after the hearing, former President Biden came to Texas for a Juneteenth celebration. A large crowd gathered outside the historic Reedy Chapel AME Church in Galveston. The church calls itself the birthplace of Juneteenth. Inside the Galveston church, there were cheers as the former president made his way down the aisle to speak to the congregation.
You know, this sacred day reminds me of another sacred day. That wonderful day 4 years ago in the East Room of the White House. And I had a great honor, where some objected from some, of making Juneteenth a federal holiday.
During the service, Biden was presented with a plaque for his role in designating Juneteenth as the nation's newest federal holiday. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Dylan McKim. We'll be back here next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.